Okay, so now we have 7-4 ready for more. I made a separate video because this is kind of long and it was going to be too much. So this is just the ready for more of 7-4, and we are defining the reciprocal ratios of sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, so the reciprocal of sine is hypotenuse over adjacent. Sorry, so that's reciprocal of cosine. Apology. Hypotenuse over adjacent, which is ha. So secant is ha. Cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. And cotangent is adjacent over opposite. So if you kind of visualize these are your reciprocals. So if we think the reciprocal of sine would be h over o, which we call cosecant. Okay, the reciprocal of cosine is h over a, which we call secant. And the reciprocal of tangent, it would be a over o and cotangent. So sine goes to the c word, cosine goes to the s word, strangely. So I always think this gets confusing because the cosine becomes the secant, but the sine becomes the cosecant. So they kind of switch. And then the tangent obviously matches with the tangent. So just make sure you remember which one is which. So the reciprocal of cosine is secant, or sec theta. The reciprocal of sine, cosecant, csc theta. And the reciprocal of tangent is cotan. And then and vice versa, the reciprocal of cotangent is tangent. The reciprocal of secant is cosecant, cosine. And the reciprocal of cosecant is sine. So you kind of just have to memorize the idea, but it always gets kids hung up on the idea that sine becomes the cosecant and cosine becomes the secant. So they do the opposite of what you'd expect. So we're going to skip the next page altogether and go to the following page, number 5, and we're going to graph what a secant function would look like. So we're going to start by doing the table, and then we'll graph the points afterwards, only because of space with my zoomed in on my phone. So if we use our unit circle and we go negative pi over 2 around the unit circle, we would be at the point negative pi over 2 for cosine would be 1. So y value, it's the x value. If we go to negative 7 pi over 4, would be the same as pi over 4, which would be root 2 over 2. And if we do that as a decimal for graphing purposes, 1.4. Negative 3 pi over 2 would be the same thing as pi over 2. And at that point, our value is, for x value is, we're doing the reciprocal. I really am going to get this messed up on you. Sorry. At 2 pi, our value is the x value, which is 1. At 7 pi over 4, we're going to do our reciprocal, so it would be 2 over root 2, which is what is approximately 1.4. At pi over 2, our value is going to be 0 over 1, which would then reciprocal be 1 over 0, which is undefined. Our cosine value at negative 5 pi over 4 is negative root 2 over 2. If we do the reciprocal, it would be negative 2 over root 2, or negative 1.4. For pi, it's going to be 1, but it's negative because it's negative pi. 3 pi over 4 is going to go with negative 1.4. Pi over 2 is undefined. Negative pi over 4 would be positive 1.4. 0 is 1. Pi over 4 is 1.4. And then pi over 2 is undefined. So we're basically taking the x value and doing the reciprocal over it. So if it was 0, reciprocal is going to become 1. But if it's 1, if it was 0 when you do the reciprocal, it's going to be undefined. So if we graph these, -2 is at 1. -7.4 is at 1.4. Which would be here somewhere. -3/2 is undefined, so we have an asymptote occurring here. And then we have -5/4 would be in here, which is -1.4, so somewhere in here. And then we have -pi is at -1. Sorry, I went the wrong way. This would be up here more. It's kind of hard to get the exact points, but this is at 1. This one's at 1.4. And then -3pi would be here, would be at -1.4 again. And then pi over 2 is undefined, so we put our asymptote. Pi over 4, which would be here, is at 1.4. 0 is at 1. And then pi over 4 is 1.4, and then we get an asymptote. So what this graph is doing is it's coming along the asymptote, swooping and going back up. This one's going to come along from the negative, go through the points, and go back down. This one's going to come along from the positive, go through the points, and go back up. And you can only imagine this one's going to go from the negative, go through the points, and go back down, and this pattern is going to continue. So our secant graph is going to look like this. If we think about our cosine graph, we would have had something that looks like this. Sorry, I'm not very good at this, but it swoops to there, comes back up, swoops to there, comes back up, swoops to there. And it would have done that graph, and now we're basically doing the mirror. So whatever point was at 1 is now going to go up from there. Any point at -1 goes down. And any point that was at 0 is now undefined because the reciprocal of 0 is undefined. And then if we do the same thing with our cosecant, which is a reciprocal of sine. So now we're doing sine x, 1 over sine x, and we find our y values and do the reciprocal. At -2pi would be undefined. 7pi over 4 would be 1.4. -3pi over 2 is 1. -5pi over 4 is 1.4. Undefined again. -1.4, -1. -1.4, undefined again. 1.4, 1. So if we plot that, -2 is undefined. -7pi over 4 is 1.4. 3pi over 2 is 1. 1.4 again. And then we're undefined at pi. And then we're at -1.4. And then at -1, -1.4, undefined at 0. And then we're at +1.4, +1, +1.4. Same idea, we have these swoops. Then come from the bottom and swoop through. Come from the top and swoop through. And we have those asymptotes. And if we graph this one, we'd come up, through, hit the 0, go down, hit the 0, go back up, hit the 0, go back down. You're going to notice that this is the same idea, but it's shifted where they are because our sine started at 0 and went to the max, where our cosine was at the max at 0. So it is a shift of our other graph. So that's our sine function starting at 0, 0, up, down, in both directions. And then you're going to see those upside down or right side up U's in reflecting off the points, the peaks or the valleys. So high peak, low valley, high peak, low valley. And again, the undefineds are wherever it crosses the 0. sometimes it's actually easier to graph your original function and then just make the reciprocals. And then for our tangent function, we're going to have the tangent is y over x, so the cotangent is x over y. So tangent would be 0, 1, undefined, -1, 0, 1, undefined, -1, 0, 1, undefined. So if we do the reciprocal of 0, we get undefined. Reciprocal of 1 is 1. The reciprocal of undefined would be 0. Reciprocal of -1 is -1. Reciprocal of 0 is undefined. 1 is 1. Undefined is 0. -1 is -1. 0 is undefined. 1 is 1. And undefined is 0. And so graphing this, looking at our cotangent, we have -2 is undefined, so an asymptote. -7.4 is 1. 3/2 is 0. And then -5/2 is -1. And then, where am I at? Pi, -pi is undefined. And then -3 pi over 4 is +1. And then pi over 2 is 0, and then -1, and then we're undefined. So it's coming down, cutting through, and going down. Down, cutting through, and going down. The original graph had the asymptotes wherever the zeros are. Right? And it did the opposite. So it's going to come up along here. It's going to cross here where there's asymptote was, because that's a 0, and go there. So the pink is the tangent, and the pencil is the cotangent.